Welcome in, Leah, to the Her Unlocked podcast. I am so excited to have you here and just honored that you were open and willing to kind of come on and share your journey and your journey with the work that we've done, but also the journey leading up to it. So welcome in.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And I'm so excited to be here.
All right. Well, I would love for the woman listening in to get to know you a little bit and just kind of hear a little bit more about your story and what led up to that moment where you were like, something's got to change. And you saying yes to doing the subconscious work.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'll try and keep this story short and condensed, but let me know if I go off the rails a little. So
I love off the rails. So go for it.
Okay. Well, watch out. So my name is Leah Garczynski. I am the owner, principal designer, solopreneur, janitor at 13th Avenue Interiors, a residential interior design studio here in South Minneapolis, where I specialize on helping restore and enhance old homes with young families living in it. And I came into interior design as a second career. So prior to this, I worked almost 2 decades in corporate apparel, merchandising, design, development, sourcing, pricing, all the things. Like I said, I did that for almost 2 decades. And then around 2020, kind of came into interior design, fell in love with it, both the design side and the business side, and walked with both feet in a full-time corporate career and what bloomed into a full-time design career for a couple of years, along with having 2 young children, a husband, a dog, all the things, and did those 2 things side by side up until the end of last year, so November of 2023, when I left corporate behind and moved into interior design full-time. And in that transition last year and coming into the beginning of this year, 2024, I was like so excited, right? Like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for, what I've been building up to. I can't believe I get to do this full time. And it just felt so energized and excited. And the wind was in my sails, and I just had so much momentum and enthusiasm for what I was doing. And that at the beginning of January, beginning of this year, I just got 3 of the biggest projects I've ever gotten. They just kind of fell into my lap, and it was so exciting. And it just felt like everything was kind of clicking, and I felt like I was very much in that flow state. And this big dream that I had and have for my business and life, it felt like all the pieces were falling into place. And it was just lovely, right? You're in that beautiful spot in life where it just feels like everything's kind of clicking and humming along, and the momentum is going. And then, fast forward to March, beginning of April, some of that energy momentum started to kind of fade a little bit into routine. And also we had some things come up in our personal life that distracted some of the attention and energy from work and projects and into family. And rightfully so, but it kind of took that wind out of my sails. And as I kind of settled into that became the new norm. Instead of that high frequency energy, I'm doing the things, it became a routine kind of robotic thing until fast forward to now July, I felt really stuck. All that momentum was gone. Business had slowed down in terms of new inquiries, and I was just unsure what to do. And I still had a very clear picture and have a very clear picture of where I wanted to go with my business and life, but I no longer had, I think when I came to you, I said, I feel like I'm filled with cement. I couldn't get the energy back and the momentum back to take the steps to get there. So I was just feeling very stuck. There was a big gap between where I was and where I wanted to be. And I didn't know how to get and what actions needed to fall in place to get there. And so in July, within a 1-week period, I had 2 things happen. One was I went to a mastermind group for women's networking group that I'm in. And these are women that have built their own businesses, have leveled up time and time again, that are trusted confidence. And I went into this mastermind group and I said, hey, I feel really stuck. I'm not sure what to do. And I fully expected their answer to be get a business coach, double down on your marketing, post more on Instagram. I was waiting for that to be the answer. And they were oh, you need to manifest. you need to start telling the universe what you want. You need to start journaling. Like they just started throwing out all of these things that were more like internal work versus doing the external things. And I was like, oh, really? Huh? Like, and it just, I was like, I trust you guys. This is interesting. Not the answer I was expecting, right? But I was like, okay, if these women that I know, like, trust, and respect the heck out of are telling me to do something totally different, like, maybe there's something to that. And then within the same week, I went to female founders. And with you, we did this like exercise of, because it was mid-year, we talked about what we wanted our end of year to look like December 31st, 2024. But we didn't just write down like the goals of like, I want X amount of dollars in my bank account or this many clients. I mean, I think we did that, but we also got into like, how do we want to feel?
Yep.
What do we see? What do we smell? What do we taste? What are we hearing? Like, and it was a very sensory experience. And we really like thought about it in a more like internal, like feeling, being way. And we wrote it as if it was already happening. And then I think it was like our exercise was to take that and go journal on it. And I did. And as soon as I started doing that, I just had this light bulb moment of like, oh, I get it. The answer is within me. I am holding me back. It's not like a business coach that's going to come in and save me from myself and be like, you need to do these things. That's what I expected the answer to be. And go do them, or you're going to have to report back to me. It was like, oh, there's something in me that's blocking me from getting to where I want to be. And it just was a light bulb moment. And then I was like, I need to do your program and like figure out what these things are. And it was just a very not coincidence, but not a coincidence, because there are no coincidences of like, this is what I'm supposed to do now. And so that's when I like approached you and was right away like, sign me up for the 6-week program. I'm like fully on board. Because it just came through a light bulb moment and multiple people in my life kind of pointing me in that direction. So that's a long story. That's how I ended up in our 6-week program.
No, I would say no. And I just think like what is so powerful, right, is it's like the people who have seen the success that we crave, who haven't like burned everything down, in the right? Because there's lots of people who have seen success and then had to burn it down. There's the people that you look up to who have that business, who continue to sustain it and grow it. The answer is everything that they walked you through. And it's why I'm so on fire for this work and continuing to talk about it, because that answer, like most people, right? Like, and that was myself 2 years ago, was like, there's got to be a strategy or a method or a book or a mentor or someone, right, that can create the blueprint. Because I even remember in that female founders moment, you were still kind of debating a business coach. You were like, I think I'm going to do a business coach. And I really, in that moment, challenge you to be like, okay, what do you want in a business coach? Are you looking for a coach or a mentor, or what exactly are you looking for? And I think, again, it was just being able to go in, like asking that question and being like, well, what do I really need? And you were like, oh,
I don't know.
Exactly. And so I love that you kind of shared that it wasn't just hearing it in the room with me, and you were looking to people in your industry that you looked up to, and they had the answers. And there's the question of like, well, how do I do that? How do I go about it? Right. You're telling me all these things, and what do I do with that? Because I think a lot of people are like, okay, what do I do with that? And so you said yes to doing this work. Did you have any like hesitancy or weariness or like questions about doing this work when you came in?
Yeah, I think like the first thing is I did go through reading all the books, and I consider myself like a very self-motivated person. I'm very type A. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And so up until that point, I had read the books and listened to the podcast and like had implemented, a very frequent journaling exercise, maybe not daily, but close to. And so I think what surprised me, but what I realized and what the game changer was that I needed to like get help from somebody else, like somebody else that knows more, that has tools that can help lead me through something, instead of kind of this being over here DIYing, trying to figure it all out on my own by just listening to an audio book or something like that. Like, okay, you did that and it got you this far, but if you really want to get from where you are now to that next point, now you need to level up and like ask for somebody's help that's going to come in. And I just knew for me that like one-on-one support was going to be so much more effective for where I was at, to really dig in and do that work. And so that was kind of maybe a surprise to me, but there was also a knowing of like, okay, this is what I need to do next. And once I had that light bulb, it was like, I'm doing it. And there was no questions, ifs, ands, or buts about it. So
Yeah, I think one of the things that was so cool to watch and get to experience with you is because you have done a lot of that work and you had started to dabble and doing the DIY stuff, that your results came pretty freaking quickly, because you were like, this, I'm all in. I'm ready to take radical responsibility. I've done all this other stuff. And I think that it's like, you didn't have to restart or do things over. And I think like even within like a session or 2 sessions together, it was really cool for those like ahas. And so that's what my question to you is like, okay, how quickly did you experience shifts, and were you surprised by the shifts you experienced?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like just backing up to what you said, like there are so many like methods and theories and like strategies and things like that out there. And that is as much a service to us as it is like a disservice, because I know I jump from method to method to method. And I think what we did together was really like figuring that out for yourself. Like, and so in that, I think what I was surprised by in our time together is I my life has been very beautiful. I don't consider to have a lot of trauma or things in my past that would create these big blocks between my conscious and my subconscious, right? Like,
Yep.
And maybe there is like a stereotype thought in the back of my head that like, oh, well, you're going to have to uncover some big trauma. And I don't have that. So like, what could my limiting beliefs be? I've grown up, in a beautiful family that loved and supported me and provided what I needed and a lot of what I wanted. And, I have a great marriage and a great career. And so like, what could there be limiting me, or how could I possibly be holding myself back? How could I possibly be holding myself back? And so I think that was the realization of like, no matter what your path has been, there are things that you've encountered along the way that you're holding within yourself. And it's not necessarily good or bad. They're just things. And depending on where you're going, those things can help push you forward or pull you backwards, or like stop you from going in either direction. And so that was like my big aha, was that there were things from my past, behaviors that had been modeled to me, that were stopping me from going to where I wanted and needed to go. And one of those things that came up in our work had to do with money. And when we started out, if you remember, we set our achievable outcome for 6 weeks. And for whatever reason, I can't even recall, but I was like, in 6 weeks, I want to be like set up to be paying my children's school tuition on a consistent basis and contribute to my family in that way, to take money that I earned in my business and to pay for my children's tuition, which is a very like logical, responsible, adultish, motherly thing to do, and to contribute to the family. Like, no duh, that makes complete sense. But as we did our work together, what came up for me was where I was and where I desired to be. The difference, one of the big game changers of getting there for me, was being willing to invest in myself. And that actually meant like a financial investment, because at this point I had invested a lot of time, right, in building up a business, both on the weekends when I had corporate and then leaving corporate and being able to invest that full time, 40-hour week schedule into my business. But what I hadn't been doing was investing money, right? And anybody that's listening that's tried to grow something, there's only so much you can kind of cobble together, and that'll take you this far again. But like, if you want to level up, you need to outsource and look for help. And as an interior designer, having a portfolio that shows up visually is obviously very important. And so there's only so far iPhones and a DIY website is going to take you. And so that was my aha, was all of a sudden, I don't know where it came on our 6-week journey and where I was exactly, but I just had this light bulb moment of like, oh my gosh, I need to invest money in myself in order to create a business that's going to be able to sustain paying for tuition every single month. I need to first invest in this, and that was like the biggest unlock. And that came from a limiting belief that I grew up with around like everybody else gets the resources first. The money goes to tuition and sports and activities and travel and groceries and this and that. And then if there's anything left over, then you can squirrel that money away, save it up, and then find the most resourceful way to spend that to get what you need or want on a budget.
Yeah.
And that was like a huge unlock for me, and realizing that that was the behavior I was falling in with my business, and was a huge thing that was holding me back from growing and showing up the way I wanted to and the way I dream of showing up to build the business and the lifestyle that I want. So that was like that big unlock and that pivot from like, I want to pay for tuition into I want to pay and invest in my business, which will then help me pay for tuition, right? So it was like a little reverse of order of things, but much more meaningful and much more from within and that subconscious versus that conscious mind saying, pay for tuition, and the inside knowing, oh no, you got to invest in yourself first. So that was a big pivot, as you know.
And the journey you just took her on, I think, is like, I could not have planned this better, of just how this work works. Because you come in thinking one thing, because your conscious mind, like you are coming in using your conscious mind. We start to tap into your subconscious. So some things flow forward. A lot of times the thing you come in to focus on isn't actually the thing you come in. This happens all the time. Like people come in with, I want to do X. And maybe even in the first session, their subconscious like, nah, no, like this is actually what's going to get you there. And then in your case, it was like, okay, here's what it is. And then as we did the work to release what's been holding you back, and I remember the session, we did single belief shift, which is a technique just for you listening in that I am able to do with my one-on-one clients, which is to take a limiting belief that is holding you back and to remove it from the place in your brain where things seem to be true, which a lot of your limiting beliefs live in there, and to take a more empowering belief and bring that in to your mind and to your brain, to the place where things are true. So you can start to believe that limiting belief. And I believe when we did that, it was very much around investing in your business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. You're right. Now I remember it very clearly. And yeah, it was like, but prior to that session, I probably wouldn't have been able to say, I would have said, I am investing in my business. See, I gave up my corporate job. I'm putting all this time and effort into it. Like I am investing in my business, but I wasn't really in the way that I knew I needed to. I was holding myself back in that sense. And again, came to realize that it was because that's kind of what was modeled for me growing up and was planted in my subconscious, and no shame on my parents or the way I grew up, but it was just an example of like that subconscious belief was not allowing me to take the steps forward that I knew I needed and wanted to. And it wasn't serving me. So we replaced it with something much more empowering, which is that belief of like investing in myself, investing in my business is also a way of investing in my family and my future. So that has been a huge game changer.
Yeah. And this is where like, why believe, like this belief work and this subconscious work is so powerful, because once you shift that belief, which can happen pretty dang quickly, right? Like through a session, and then you leave and you're kind of like, what'd we do there? Okay. Like, we'll see, right? Like, and then you just start behaving from that place. And I'm in Money Month, right? With the podcast, with what I'm sharing on social. And it's a big reason why I wanted to invite you in. Because when you came to me, did you think that you had any money stories or beliefs that were holding you back?
No, I thought I was great with money, actually. I'm like, I'm super good. Give me a budget. I can stick to it. I can figure out how to cut corners. No problem. But that is its own money story. That is like, I thought I was great at it, but really, and even now, my husband and I continue to have our own personal financial conversations. I realize that that is more operating out of a place of scarcity and versus abundance. And that kind of that idea again of like squirreling money away and being really tight with it and that type of stuff is not necessarily the money story that's going to empower me to go to where I want to go, right? That is more of a scarcity mindset than this abundance and ease and joy that I'm trying to cultivate in my life. So that's been a little bit of a shift. And again, it's not like good with money, bad with money. It
Yep.
was like you're operating from this place, but in order to fulfill what you want, you need to operate a little bit differently and think of money a little bit differently. And in doing that, just when I changed that achievable outcome from tuition to investing in my business, I didn't
Yep.
have the money sitting in my bank account to do that. But as soon as I decided that's what I was going to do, one, I got a ton of energy. It's like that energy just like popped back. And I was like, oh, I know what I'm doing now. I know where I'm going. I know that I'm going to make this money and invest in photography and styling and web and branding and that type of stuff. And it just like, the energy just popped. And as soon as that energy popped back into place and I felt that momentum and I felt that flow and like that magnetism, clients, like things just started showing up. I don't even know how to describe it. And it sounds like maybe woo woo and crazy if you've never experienced this, but all of a sudden, I had clients that I had worked with a year ago where they weren't ready to do a full service project, all of a sudden come back and be like, okay, I'm ready now. And I was like, whoa, what? Well, I haven't talked to you in a year, but like, okay, great, you know? So I had some clients coming out of the woodwork. And at the same time, I felt more confident
Yes.
and excited about reaching out to clients and offering up services versus feeling like I got to go out there and try and sell my services to make some money. It was like, oh, okay, now I feel really energized to go out there and like do this work and to help people and families in their homes and in return receive back, you know, money and their investment into me. And so it just became all of a sudden this like huge just growth of energy and exchange of energy between myself and clients and money. And it all just kind of started to click. And all of a sudden, those investments were coming in, the money was showing up in the bank account. And I was able to start investing in those things and putting deposits down. And it just all felt very positive and exciting versus like threatening and scary and like, oh, I don't know, should I be doing this? It wasn't that. It was like, I'm doing this and I feel so empowered and I can see how doing this is going to lead to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So it just had this like ripple effect of not just I'm going to invest in myself, but it helped carry into the action that I was seeking in the first place.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, for your achievable outcome, there was a number associated. Not that you have to share the number. I just want you to talk about that moment with that like you stepped into that version you were just describing. And then what happened? Yes, clients came in and you had this moment, right?
Yeah. And we set a very like intentional, achievable outcome, which was like, imagine where you're going to be in 6 weeks from now, right? And I was able to describe very clearly, like, I am here in my office. It's a Friday. The door is open in my office that allows a breeze to come in. You know, I'm working on my laptop. I open up my bank account. There is this much money in there. And I feel, you know, and there was a lot of like, and I feel happy and I feel joy and I feel like this abundance and happiness and ease in my life. And all of a sudden one day, like right within that time frame of when we said it was going to happen, I was here in my office and I opened up my bank account. I was just doing some things and I was like, whoa, that's the number that I had set as my goal. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And then I looked around and the door was open and the breeze was coming in. And like I had my empty smoothie cup sitting on my desk, which we had talked about, like, you know, and all of a sudden I was just like, whoa, this happened. It actually came true in the way that I had pictured and envisioned it, and then did the work to get there. Like yes, the manifestation and the listening to the achievable outcomes and all of that like helped my brain know that this was true, that this was
Yeah.
going to happen, and put it in there as like, okay, this is going to happen now. And lo and behold, it did. And it was just the most amazing thing to see how those two parts of ourselves, the conscious and the subconscious, can work together to
Yeah.
achieve that thing. But if they're not in harmony, there's no way I would have gotten there, because I set a lofty goal
Yes. It
financially.
wasn't just pennies. It was not, yeah, it was
It was
audacious.
thousands of dollars. And it was like, if those two things though hadn't been working together, there's no way I could have gotten there, because just posting on Instagram or reaching out to past clients wouldn't have had the momentum or the energy behind it that I did by having that subconscious in line and having a really clear goal that I was planting in my brain and knowing that that was going to happen. So,
Yeah. And you were specific of how you wanted it,
yeah.
right? Like, so talk a little bit like, yes, you had this goal, and it wasn't just, I have this goal and I want to reach it, and here's where the money's going to go, and being intentional about that. You also were very, very clear on how you wanted it. So talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that piece. Like, how did you want it, right? Because we can
Yeah.
make that much money a lot of different ways.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's what I keep anchoring back to. And all the work I've done is like creating these things in my life, you know, the number, the business, the clients, that type of stuff, but with ease and joy. Those are my two words that I keep going back to, is like, how can I do this with ease and joy? Because I mean, I'm sure any of us can make any amount of money if we're willing to give up every single hour of our day and,
Yep.
you know, work tirelessly and this and that. But like, that's not cultivating or creating the life that I want. And so it's like, I want this, and I want it to come with ease and joy. And I want to be able to enjoy it and feel happy and feel present and feel like, you know, the pieces of my life, personal and work and all the other things in between, aren't creating friction between each other, but that everything's kind of working harmoniously. And so that was a very, very intentional part of it, of like, I want this to come. And that's how I almost didn't realize when I reached my achievable outcome, because I was just, everything felt so easy. And I was like, not easy. Easy is the wrong word.
Yeah.
Everything was coming with ease.
Yeah.
Two very different things. Everything was coming with ease. And I felt very much in that flow state, and I was enjoying myself, and I was happy that I wasn't grinding and working myself like, you know, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week type of a situation. So I was almost surprised and caught off guard when I was able to achieve that big money month and, you know, bring in new clients that I had wanted, but feel so good doing it, you know?
Yeah.
And that was probably the biggest gift of all, was being able to see that I can achieve those things that I had believed would require 80-hour work weeks,
Yep.
and giving up family time and doing things that I didn't want to do, like sell in a salesy way,
Yeah.
or, you know, whatever it might have been that I thought I had to do to be able to achieve this, that was holding me back, but that it didn't have to be that way. That you could get that and have this life and lifestyle and this feeling and this enjoyment at the same time. And it didn't have to be an either or.
And that's what I love so much about your story, because even though, again, like, you came in and you weren't like, I need to work on my money beliefs and like,
Yeah.
right? And like, that is where you went, and that is what we focused on. I mean, there were some other things we focused on too, and like, that became a prominent thing. And the story that a lot of us have is exactly what you just said, which is, I have to work harder to make more, right? Like, that has been a belief of mine. Like, it has to be a grind. You have to burn out. And I remember you talking to me in our first session of like, I do not want that. And I think you were seeing yourself heading in that direction. If I'm going to make this work and make that money, that goal, I find myself defaulting into, it has to be this grind. It has to be burnout. I can't have it both. It's an either or situation. And so I love that you shared that, because I think the woman listening in can definitely relate to that. Again, I love how you're like, hey, like, I don't have this big like trauma with money. Like, and that's very similar to like me. Like, I don't have, and yet we all have some of these beliefs. Part of it can be small things that have happened in our family, but also just how society is. Some of our
Yeah.
beliefs come from how we're all conditioned by society to see how, right? Like a lot of society is like, you must, especially as entrepreneurs, you must honestly like go bankrupt before you get big type of thing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't I think I was truly holding myself back because I thought, well, if you're going to be successful, you're going to have to give up,
Yeah.
these things in life, your time, your energy that you want to give to your family. Well, you're going to have to kiss that goodbye. Right.
Yeah.
And so I was just not, that's why I was stuck,
Yeah.
because to get to the next level was like, I thought had to be this huge grind. And there is definitely, a
Yeah.
narrative out there, whether you're reading a book or looking on Instagram. There are so many stories where it's like you have to hit this wall where you're just like, absolutely miserable, unhappy, unwell, working
Yeah.
all these hours, and then you'll have your breakthrough,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so I was just like, oh, I don't know if I'm up for that, right? Like, I don't know. And I have these two young, amazing kids and a husband, and I don't really want to sacrifice all of that. And and so I think I was feeling stuck and in that place because I thought that that's what was required to get to the next level, was to do that. And I was not willing to go there. So I was just stuck. And these are
Yeah.
limiting beliefs that I had in the back of my mind, and why I would describe our 6 weeks together as me having a facilitated conversation with myself. Like, you are the facilitator. It's almost like couples therapy. It's like
Yeah.
you're the facilitator, and then there's me, who's like the day-to-day Leah, that's like, put that on the grocery list, sign the permission slips, go to bed early so you can have your morning routine of exercising and journaling. And then there's which I now know is the conscious me. And then
Yeah.
there's the other me, who is the one that's like, well, I know we have these big dreams, but I'm also kind of scared. And I also kind of think like maybe we can't do it. And if we do, we're going to have, and so it's like these two versions of myself that then came together and had a conversation and got on the same page of like what we need and want, what's holding us back, and how can we like almost work together to get there
Yeah.
and get us on the same trajectory instead of like working up against each other like this. And for anybody out there that's seen the Inside Out movie, it's kind of like that. It's like getting those people in your head that are that are at the control panel, like working together instead of maybe against each other.
Okay. That's why I love having clients describe it, because I'm in my own world. I've been certified in it. Like, I'm so embedded in it. And I
Yeah.
think it is so helpful for other women to hear what that experience is like. And the way you just described it, I feel like it's so relatable. And I'm guessing the woman listening in is like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And I would absolutely agree in the essence of like, I don't give you the answers. Like,
Oh,
right?
gosh,
Like,
yeah.
it is always going back to you and tapping into that, to your point, that subconscious side, and being able to bring it forward and have that conversation with conscious Leah,
Yes.
and getting them on board. And I think, if the woman listening in is like, that seems kind of scary and uncomfortable and like
Yeah.
a lot, like, what
Yeah.
would you tell her?
If anybody's sitting in the seat I was, where it's like you just keep trying the things, you keep adding stuff on. You're like, okay, well, externally you might have an Instagram account and a blog, and now you're going to set up, and you just keep like doing the things and adding stuff on, and you're like, I'm not getting anywhere. And then you're reading the books and you're trying different systems, and you're like, I'm doing all these things. Like, how many more things can I stack on top of each other? But you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, and you feel like you're kind of stuck. I think the answer is like, stop adding things on and go in, instead of looking out and trying to do all these things and seek all these other people out for the answers, and trying to model what other people are doing and following their theories and following their protocol and doing their routines and stacking the habits. Like, instead of doing all the things that everybody else, like, it's time to maybe go in and like have that conversation with yourself about like, okay, what's working here, what's not. Like, where do we want to be and how come we're not there and how can we get there together, both me, myself and I, like, how can we do that? And I think, if you can do some of it, like I said, on your own. Like if you journal and if you like to meditate, like you can do some of that on your own. But again, it's only going to get you so far because we're not given the tools and the modalities and the things to get us there, right? Sometimes you need somebody to help hold your hand and facilitate that and lead you and guide you through that. You're right. You're not giving the answers, right? Like you got to come up with that stuff on your own. But when somebody is there and helping walk you through that, you can have that conversation and go deeper than you could probably go on your own and really tap into some things that you don't know how to and probably don't have. If you're doing all things, you don't have the time set aside to do it. So that was the other thing too, is just having that time set aside and dedicated to like sitting down for an hour and a half and really having those conversations. And then that residual, like leftover thoughts that you kind of just carry with you and work through. That's the huge part too. So I think it's really like quieting the noise and all the things from the outside and calming it down. And then just like taking some time for you and yourself to kind of go walk through some things, talk through some things, and get yourself on the same page.
I love that because it's like it does start with pausing. It does start with asking yourself the questions. It starts with building that self-awareness because what I would say, right, like you did all of that and you were pretty self-aware and you came in and it was like, okay, I've done that, but something still has me stuck. And I think that's where having someone come in and do techniques like we were able to do allowed you to bring forward, right, the things that like you weren't consciously journaling on or consciously aware of. Because if you're at that point of like, I don't know why I'm stuck, then this is the work that will unlock it. Because I also, like we've talked about that, we're very similar in the essence of that's where I started and did all the things and was like, why does this still feel so hard? Like, why does
I'm
change
journaling,
feel
okay? I filled out a whole page. Like, where are the answers,
Exactly. Or like this method and strategy and stuff worked for everybody else. Like, why isn't it working for me? And I think it was like beautiful you sharing that a part of it was like that fear around how it would have to be if you were to be, because you came in like you were really clear. I've had this vision for my business. Like it wasn't like you didn't know where you wanted to go, which I actually find that a lot of women know exactly what they want and where they want to go. It's just fear is either holding them back from saying it out loud, which in your case wasn't the case. You're like, I am very clear. I just like something is not allowing me to get there, and realizing that it was those beliefs around money and work, right? That truly unlocked kind of that, okay, like I can have my which I'm like so passionate about helping women figure out what that is. Cause right, the way you want to experience it is different than me and other people. And we all have this conditioning that it has to look and feel a certain way. And it's been such an honor to be a part of your journey and to continue the journey. One thing I want you to share is we did 6 weeks together. You're also doing my maintenance program to kind of keep this work at the forefront as things come up, because it's not that we're immune to things.
Absolutely.
I also just want you to speak of like, what has it felt like coming out of the 6 weeks and how you're operating? Because it's not just like do 6 weeks and that's it, right? So like, how do you feel different since we've ended the 6 weeks in your business, in your life?
I mean, I feel like equipped now. Okay. So a lot of what we worked on in the 6 weeks, I still carry with me on a daily basis. I have my personalized hypnosis that I listen to and our achievable outcomes, but I also have become like more back to that journaling thing. I know I kind of have better prompts of what I'm journaling on and what I'm working towards and that type of thing. So I have better tools in my toolbox. And I also have more self-awareness around these things, because it's not like you said, it's not like 6 weeks and you're done with this work forever, right? In that sense, it's kind of like you're not just like, oop, check the box. I'm all better with money now and my work, like all it's solved. It's not, right? It's like you have to kind of keep working at it. But I have so much more awareness around it. And like we were talking about, the shift from having a consistent corporate income that showed up every 2 weeks in your bank account to being an entrepreneur where there are much more waves impacts our personal finances. And so my husband and I have been having a lot of conversations recently about our personal finances and like our lifestyle and where is the money coming in from and where is it going out and that type of stuff. And what came up for me was when we were in one of our conversations, my immediate thought was like, well, I got to cancel my haircut, cancel the cut and color, cancel this idea of doing a new website this year and pump it all towards, and that was like my gut reaction was to just go back to where I was of like, cut, anything that has to do with me, put all of our resources towards the family. And then again, if there's anything left over, right? Like, then I can squirrel that away and maybe get my hair cut. That's what came forward for me. And because of our work though, I was able to be like, ooh, that's interesting that came up. That's coming from that old belief system of like, you can't invest in yourself and a little bit of scarcity and some of those other feelings. And so I've been working through and using the techniques that we have to like go back and reprogram that and to say like, hey, money, you're not going to stress me out. I'm not going to dip into scarcity. Instead, I'm going to be grateful for you. I'm going to be intentional with how I spend you. I'm going to continue to invest and prioritize, but I'm not going to slip back into those old patterns and like go back to that. Now, yes, there's some budgeting things that need to change, right? Like I'm flexible for sure, but it doesn't have to be like Leah cuts everything and like we're just going to slip back into this old like everything else comes first type of thing. It's how can we balance a little bit better? So that's been really powerful to have that self-awareness and to be able to apply it not just in my business anymore, but in our personal life. And even to say that out loud to my husband and be like,
I was going to
so
say,
I realized that, this, and this. And it's funny because then he's able to talk about his money mindset and his money beliefs, which are pretty different from mine. He's still like, no, we have to invest. We have to like, he has a different mindset. And so when we have those better conversations, it just helps us reach a place of more harmony and like understanding of where we're both operating out of, and then we're able to make better decisions together. So that's been probably the biggest unlock is out after the 6 weeks is like being able to apply that in my personal life and notice even in business too, like when those things come up and be able to acknowledge them and then work through them instead of just like slipping into those past behaviors and that type of thing. So that's really big.
Well, and I want to capture that because again, such a beautiful example of how this works. It's like, right? Like you had that belief and our belief drives our state, drives our behaviors, drives our results. And so you had that belief and it was about to drive you into a state of scarcity, a state of just like kind of overwhelm, right? Stress is the word you use. So a state of stress, which then stress drives behaviors for you, right? It looks different for everyone, but for you, the behavior is like tightening up everywhere on yourself. And to your point, squirreling away and like everything related to you and like what you can invest in is you grip it tight and right. And so like, you can see how that works. Like that belief makes you feel a certain way from that feeling you behave. And then your results is right in the past would have been not a lot of capacity to potentially move your business forward in the way that you wanted, right? Because you're squeezing the investment from there.
Exactly.
And so like,
exactly. And that tightens up. And then I unknowingly am like repelling clients. You know what I mean? Because I'm just like all balled up here, playing it small and just like lockdown mode. And it's almost like repelling people from me. Versus I've learned if I can just operate from this place of like, okay, it's okay. Like I'm going to be And one of your past guests said this, which I love. It's like, I'm going to be intimate with my money. I'm going to
Yes.
be intentional with how I spend it and that type of stuff. But I'm also going to be like open and letting it, that exchange and that energy like flow back and forth. Let people invest in me. I'm still going to invest in other things in my life, like my website, right? But maybe I'll pull back here. So when I like loosen the grip and feel a little bit more open, thanks to the work that we did, and I'm aware of that, then things flow and feel better and actually show up in life more than when I just, like I said, go back and like hunker down and
Yeah.
hold on to everything really tight and just go into like scarcity mode and just like hide over here with my, and squirrel everything away. Like it's the opposite impact, which is again something that I probably wouldn't have realized before, that when I slip into that mode, you're actually kind of detracting and like in a different zone than when you operate from a place of abundance and understanding and that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, and the other piece too, because I mean, with my background in neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, we talk a lot about the NLP communication model, which is this woman, which my clients see all the time, and people who attend my workshops, you know what I'm talking about, this woman with these filters on the inside of her mind. And what the NLP communication model is built on is how we talk to ourselves and how we talk to others. And I even want to point out, right, like you mentioned, like I even said that out loud to my husband. And so the way you communicate to others, right, is from a more empowering place. And a lot of times, like at least I know for me, when it came to money in the past, based on my beliefs, I was really big into avoiding. Like that
Yeah.
was my behavior, and like not talking about it. And if I don't talk about it, then we don't have to deal with it. And then on the inside, it's like you were saying, like tightening up and gripping and doing all of the things. And so it was just beautiful to hear like the impact even on your relationship with your husband, and got him thinking, because when we do this work, right, there is a ripple effect on the people around us.
Yeah.
And I just thought that that was an incredible demonstration as you caught that belief, you honored it, right? We talk a lot about honoring it, releasing it, and bringing in and tapping in a more empowered belief, which you reached for in that moment, which allowed you to behave very differently than what you would have in the past. Just so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, it's true. Our work has made me feel more empowered by money and more grateful and feel more abundance around it. Whereas before, you're right, like I'm the same way. I would have avoided that finance conversation, been like, that's kind of in your wheelhouse,
Yeah.
like, and dodged it. And then, but instead, this time I'm open to having the conversations. And yeah, it did bring up those past beliefs of like, oh, we got to hunker down. But instead, I was able to face that too and be like, no, that's not what we're going to do here. So it's been a game changer for sure. And it came just in time too, because like it just helped me show up differently in a time where I needed to show up differently.
And that is the whole point of this work, like you said, to operate from a more empowered place. That's like the whole goal. Because when when we're operating from it and we're not like blaming our circumstances, right? All our circumstances are different, but it's like, okay, we're in this situation. We can go one of two ways. Which belief is going to actually help us and serve us well versus the other? And again, I talk a lot about it's not about gaslighting yourself into new beliefs. That's why this work is really powerful. It's about like holding space for them, which again, I love exactly what you talked about. Like you held space. You're like, I see you. I see you there. Thank you. Thank you. But I'm going to choose this other one. I'm going to move forward from that place. So, okay, with that, I want to have you leave the woman listening in with any like final thoughts, and also where can she find you if she is in, the Minneapolis area looking for some work. I want you to also like be able to tell her where she can find you. I'll put your information in the show notes. But yeah, any final thoughts for the woman listening who maybe is like, this is interesting. What would you tell her?
I would say follow your curiosity, because if there is something that's like you've tried all the things and they haven't gotten you to where you want, or if this is piquing your interest a little bit, then you should follow that, because you don't know until you give it a try, right? Like don't be closed to it. Follow your curiosity. And I think there's so many different ways that people can connect with you and your communities depending on what fits with them. But follow it, right? Like I said, I was blown away by how many women in my life, women that I look up to, women that I respect, were like, this is the work you need to do in order to do this work over here, right? Like you need to do the subconscious, the inner work in order to be able to go out there in the world and do the more physical, literal work and get the return and enjoyment out of it. So follow your curiosity. And if you want to see, hear more about 13th Avenue Interiors, I'm online. Our website is www.13th, so 13th avenueinteriors.com, and same handle on Instagram. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for you and what this back half of the year has brought and what it can like bring into next year. And so I'm just so grateful and thankful for being here today.
And I'm honored that you said yes. And it's such an honor to have walked with you and that I get to continue to walk with you in a lot of different capacities because I know we're in each other's worlds in different ways. And your willingness to stay curious, like you just said, like that was your whole, like you just kept getting curious and super vulnerable with yourself. Because when you talk about those two parts of you, it does require a sense of vulnerability to make the moves that you did. And you're, I mean, it is so cool because I know exactly what your vision is. And like it's already happening, right? Like things are transpiring and it's just like, it's so much more within reach. And yeah, it's been such an honor to lock arms with you. So thank you for gracing the Her Unlocked podcast. And I know the woman listening in is gotten to be a little bit more like open based on how you've shared your experience, because I think it is one thing again for me to talk about it and another thing for them to hear someone who went through it talk about it. And I think you've left her with a lot of things to think about around money and what her money beliefs might be, even if she feels like she's good with money. So thank you so much, Leah, and we'll be chatting.
Thank you so much.